Hello, 7th graders. This video shows a few more examples of how to add and subtract mixed numbers with positives and negatives. So let's start with the first example here. Now, when I'm looking at a mixed number, I want to first look at adding the whole number parts together and adding the fractional parts together. So here I have -3 and 4/5 and 2 and 2/5. And I'm going to add those together. I'm going to start by adding -3 plus 2. And then remembering that there's going to be a negative sign here with the 4/5. So then I'll do -4/5 plus 2/5. And then I'll add everything back together at the end. So here with -3 plus 2, I have 3 negatives and 2 positives, which is going to give me a result of -1. And when I'm adding fractions that have the same denominator, I can just think about adding the numerators, right? Because this would be like if I had 4/5 of a negative and then 2/5 positives, right? And 2 of those fifths that are negative are going to cancel out with the 2/5 that are positive, leaving me a result of -2/5. Now I can show that with a picture too, just to kind of help us understand where that's coming from. So here's my rectangle that I'm going to break into fifths. Now usually we would also then break it into fifths the other direction, right, to show our other one, but I don't really need to do that, and here's why. So I'll shade my 4/5 in red because those are negative, and then if I'm adding two positive 1/5, I can just shade over, right, those two red ones to make some 0 pairs. So this makes a 0, that makes a 0, and I'm left with 2 -5ths. Now my last step here will be then to add the -1 and the -2/5. And because these both have the same sign, it's not going to be too tricky. -1 plus -2/5 will give me -1 and 2/5. So the answer here to my problem, -3 and 4/5 plus 2 and 2/5, is -1 and 2/5. Now here's another example that now we have different denominators, but we're going to approach it the same way to start, okay? First thing I want to do here is convert my subtraction problem into an equivalent addition problem. So 2 and 1/3 minus 1 and 3/8 is equivalent to 2 and 1/3 plus the opposite of 1 and 3/8, which is -1 and 3/8, right? And now I'm going to do just what I did with the last one. Add the whole number parts together, so 2 plus -1, and then add the fraction parts together, 1/3 plus -3/8. Okay, now for 2 plus -1, 2 positives plus 1 negative, that will give me a result of 1. And the 1/3 plus -3/8, I'm going to draw a picture. So here's my rectangle. I'll start by dividing it into thirds. Then I can shade one of those thirds in yellow because that was a positive 1/3. And then I'll divide it into eighths the other direction. These are going to get small, but that's okay. The most important part is that we can see that those are eighths. And then I'll shade 3 of those eighths negative. Okay, so we can see here that the overlapping sections are going to make our 0 pairs. And then we'll also make some more 0 pairs. So I'll make a yellow and a red will make a 0 pair. Another yellow and red, yellow, red, yellow, red, yellow, and red. So I'm left with one red piece at the very end, which means my answer is going to be a negative. My numerator will be 1, and my denominator is going to be how many total boxes there are. Well, this was 3 by 8. So in total, there are 24 boxes. So this is negative 1/24. Now this is a little bit harder to add our positive 1 and our negative 1/24 back together because these have different signs. And with mixed numbers, the sign in front of the mixed number needs to be the same sign for the fractional part and the whole number part. So what I have to do here is think about really subtracting, right? So if I was going to take one whole and take away 1/24 from that, I would be left with 23/24. Okay, because my one whole is 24/24. So then if I add a negative 1/24, that gives me 23/24 as my final answer. And that's the final answer for my whole problem. So 2 1/3 minus 1 3/8 equals positive 23/24. Our final example today is negative 1 1/2 plus negative 4 3/5. And just like I've started with the other ones, I'm going to start by adding together my whole number parts and my fractional parts. Remembering that each of these fractions, because the mixed number is negative, also means that the fraction is negative. So I'm going to do negative 1 plus negative 4. And that will give me negative 5. And then I'm going to do negative 1/2 plus negative 3/5. And for this one, I want to draw a picture. So I'll draw my rectangle. I'll start by dividing it in half and shading in red because it is a negative 1/2. And then I'll go in fifths the other direction. This doesn't really look like a 5. There we go. So here's my fifths. And I'm going to shade 3 of those also in red. So you'll see that the overlapping sections are going to get a little bit darker. Okay, and I just have a bunch of red. So for this one, I don't make any 0 pairs. I'm just adding a bunch of things together. Okay, so I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Plus, I can actually think about these overlapping segments as filling in my blank boxes here to make one whole. And then I have one piece left over. So this is going to equal negative 1 and 1/10 because there are 10 total sections in my whole. And then my last step here will be to add my negative 5 plus negative 1 1/10 by adding the whole number parts together and keeping the fraction. So this will equal negative 6 1/10. And that will be my final answer to this problem.